meeting to order. Let's all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Roll call, please.
Do we have Jada? Are we getting her? I will, I guess, break the silence.
We're waiting for roll call.
Oh. Who does roll call? Oh, okay.
Jim Palmer is absent. Corey Brown. Mark Bevelheimer is absent. Frank Deturi. Here. Andy Gale. Here. Sarna Salzman.
Here.
TJ Andrews.
Here.
Mary Pitcher.
Here.
Bill Perkins.
Yep.
Chris Wood is absent. Matthew Cook is absent. Christy Trigg.
Here.
Ty Wessel.
Here.
We have a quorum. We are at first public comment. If any member of the comment wishes to address the committee, this would be your first opportunity. Okay. Moving on to approval of the minutes from the last meeting.
Move to approve as presented.
Second.
Motion made with support. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. On to approval of the agenda. I would like to request that we go through the items of business on number 9 in reverse order.
Sure, why you want to do that?
I just feel like the item D is the most important one to talk about, and we're likely to run out of time. And the surveys might be the least important, and they look like they're in the opposite order of importance for discussion.
Support. The motion to amend.
I don't know, am I allowed to make a motion? I thought,
Yes.
okay, then I make a motion to approve agenda amended with the items in item 9 in reverse order.
Second.
Support by Andrews. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Then, moving on to review of plan format and draft meeting schedule. And Susan, it looked like you wanted to break the ice. I'm not sure what you wanted to.
Yeah, mostly I wanted to note that Vimala is not joining us today. We have Jada from Fishbeck. She's the one human on the screen down there.
Oh.
Hi, Jada. Welcome. For those on the other side of the room, she just said thank you for having me until we get the sound connected.
Okay, great. So what we have here, and I know Lydia, I just saw that you sent us a somewhat filled out version of this Eagle template format that Trudy had sent to us earlier. We've already seen that version, but it looks like what we have here is just a reminder of what the plan format basics are. And then you all worked on a calendar of agendas, kind of scoping out the topics for future agendas with the 6/12/2026 first draft materials management plan presented goal. Does staff or Fishbeck want to say anything in addition to this, or should we just have a discussion?
So this obviously was a very rough draft. It was kind of just trying to get thoughts down onto paper. So things could have been grouped differently. I understand there's going to be some fluidity, that I don't think it's going to be exactly set in stone. As we have more discussions, other things might come up, but the chair asked for us to work backward from the plan, the draft plan that's due in June. And so I guess, do you want to speak to Fishbeck's strategy on, because you see what they've already completed with the demographics and just, some verbiage. But then you start to get into like infrastructure and different things that we do need to identify. So do you just want to speak to that strategy?
Also, Jada, please pipe up if I get anything wrong here, but in my conversations with Vimla, her approach has been to take the little reports that we're giving you on the survey results, on the household hazardous waste, those are going to end up being sections of the report itself. So she's like taking off chunks that will later be all put together into the end product. So the information that you've gotten so far is not just random stuff that we're sending you. It's intended to be part of the report in the end. And part of this table came from a conversation I had with Sarna at the OWMPC, the
Organic
ODAP?
Waste Diversion Advisory Partners.
That one. Sarna and I had a good conversation there. Lydia and I also talked, and then Lydia and I met last week and we started putting this table together. And we understand and recognize that there's frustration on the committee that we're not making more progress. And part of that, I think, has been me coming in and being completely clueless about what was going, I didn't know what an MMP was, so I'm getting more up to speed. And part of our conversation, Lydia and Sarna and me, has been that I will be more of a facilitator at the meetings and try and draw out some more conversation from you folks instead of us reporting to you and telling you what's in front of you in a report that you've had in your packets. It'll be, what are your questions? What do you want to talk about? Where does this lead us next? So we do expect to start making some more visible progress, and Lydia and I are continuing to talk about how we approach that. This table is sort of the first step in that process. Did I get everything?
Yeah, those are just like potential agenda items that, Vimla, Susan, and I thought might be important. You might notice that there's not specific materials listed on there, as we previously discussed. Sarna, you did send me a list, and I did take off soils and industrial because I feel that's kind of out of the scope of this committee's task. I see how soils relate to.
You're talking about the list I sent that was from our meeting minutes of the list that this committee came up with. This was not my list. This was our list.
Okay. So I took off industrial and soil, and there seemed to be a consensus among staff and the contractor on that. And I just wanted to remind everyone that Eagle does not require us to have a specific plan for each material that we've identified as a group. We can include it if we would want to. We just have to consider time. And then they do require us to have a plan for organics and recyclables in particular. And then HHW, as we'll talk about more today, HHW was identified in Grand Traverse County's plan in 2012, so we saw that was something important. It's kind of, I see us including HHW in our plan just because of the volatility of the materials that we're talking about. But I just wanted to let you guys know that we don't have to have a plan for each of those materials. We can if we want to. But that is going to eat up a bit of time, and we were trying to discuss an approach for that. You want more education about each material. I think that was a request of the committee, and maybe best management practices for each of those materials. And for time's sake, we were thinking like maybe we could put together an educational report on each material that we send out to you guys, and we don't have to necessarily go over it in a meeting. And then, I don't know, we include best management practices in that report, or that's where the discussion comes into play. I would like your thoughts on that, because I would like to touch on all of those materials listed, other than industrial and soils.
Is this list sounding familiar to other people here? That was when we were, I think in this building, in the training room, and using the whiteboards, and I think Elise was facilitating that meeting. We came up with a list of, it's kind of your classic list of municipal solid waste. I don't have it in front of me.
I can pull it
but
up
it was
if
like
you guys want me to.
commercial or construction, demolition, organics, yard waste, various
Tires.
recyclables, bulky
Yeah,
items.
HHW.
Food included with the organic?
Yeah, food scrap management, yard waste management.
What do we want to do with that list?
That was something that this committee said, we would like to understand these streams better as
And
part of our
Are we
committee
going
work.
to, or are we
And-
going to skip some of it?
That's what we're talking
So
about.
the
that right now.
strategy of how to go about that, just for time's sake, because like, there's a lot of experts that sit on this committee who might not want to come to a meeting and hear about electronics or something that they're very familiar with, right?
Or should be
I'll-
presenting about that.
Already. Do you know what I'm saying though? Like, so maybe we do like a report and an email, and you guys can, whoever feels they need to learn more about that specific material can learn more about it on their own time. And then we can have a discussion about it, but I just don't think we need to go through a presentation on each material during our committee meetings, but you guys could feel differently.
That list is stuff that each county has to deal with. And, I mean, we have a tire collection, and we have an electronics collection, and should we know some more stuff about it? How can we make it work better? Bring in more stuff? I don't know.
Do you want to approach it from a recyclable standpoint, or do you want to approach it from a cardboard, 3 different types of plastic, glass? That's kind of what we need to make a decision on, right? I mean, how deep to delve into what is recyclable versus just recyclables?
Well, yeah, that's that. But we're okay with that. All we need is more people to use it. What I'm saying is the electronics and the tires, and what are the details of that? How can we make it work better?
And what I heard staff and consultant offer was maybe putting together some kind of best management practice summary, and a summary of the flow and best management practices
And maybe like
associated with that.
talking about what's already working well. So maybe we don't need to spend too much time on that if there's already
I don't think we need to
solutions.
spend too much time on it, but it needs to be best management. Saying this is how to do it the best way.
And identifying how far off are each of our counties, like what's the gap between where we're at and where we would want, where best management practices say we should be.
I was just going to ask, are tires considered recyclables, or is recyclable a term of art that's paper, plastic, glass, and metals?
Tires are recyclable.
So then, how can, I mean, if the rule is we have to achieve a certain recyclable rate or set a goal of achieving a recyclable rate, how can we exclude tires, as an example, if they are recyclable?
I don't know that they would fall in the category of being a recyclable in the terms that Eagle is looking for. Currently, all the tires from the collection events get sent to a facility in Hillman, Michigan, where they are turned into electricity. So that might be a good place to start is understanding what the difference between diversion from the landfill and what Eagle is going to allow as considered recyclables. So those are two different things.
That should be a non-hazardous special waste, probably, right?
A tire?
How they classify that?
Yeah, well, there was a time where that material was being recycled. So that would be, I guess to get into a deeper conversation of how it's classified and whether or not it's used, it depends on the market, really. And I think that probably some clarification from Eagle, but also maybe staff helping committee members understand that big difference of diversion from the landfill and recycling rate numbers. Eagle is looking for our baseline recycling rate. So how much materials that are considered recyclables are we recycling? What percentage compared to what we're landfilling? And then once we've established that rate, then we need to make sure that we are meeting the goals set forth by the state, which I think we probably already are on their timeline. If we're not, we have to show them how we're going to get to that established recycling rate. So we want to be clear in the difference between hazardous waste, other materials that would not be classified as recyclables but considered as diverted from the landfill, and what actual materials are considered recyclable.
But in the case of tires, man, the tire can be put into asphalt. That needs to be legislated. We need to be able to say, legislation, state of Michigan, you got to legislate this much tires have to go into your new asphalt. That's how it's got to be done, and we got to put our chip on that side of the scale. You can say, okay, we're not going to recycle tires, we're just going to divert them. No.
Yeah, that's not what I'm saying. You're right. If the group decides that tires are something...
That's just an example. We don't have to dwell on it. We can keep moving.
Well, I think the bigger question is how are we going to have the conversations that we need to have at this table in the time frame that we have available to us at this point? How much can we just do some homework? And how much does that homework really direct what goes into our plan versus what it directs us to have a conversation about?
And I just wanted to go on the record that Eagle has informed us that we are meeting their benchmark recycling standards as of now. So, for example, that's just like, 90% of single-family dwellings in areas with more than 5,000 residents have access to curbside recycling. By 2028, communities with less than 100,000 residents have at least one recycling drop-off location for every 10,000 residents. So just things like that. So we are meeting those benchmarks, and obviously there's more that could be done. Like, we could look at expanding curbside, but that takes a conversation with the folks who actually have the infrastructure to do that. But anyway, I digress a little bit. I just wanted to put that out there.
So I guess I just want to clarify, because I'm looking at page 5 of 11 of the packet where it says that we have to set a recycling rate goal, and that goal is a very specific thing. It's the recycling rate is the amount of municipal solid waste recycled or composted divided by the total amount, right, that we otherwise recycle, compost, deliver, or incinerated. So, sorry, keep going. Yeah, it's under.
In the plan itself,
In the plan.
not on page 5 of our packet.
And
Okay.
so so we have a rate, for our region or by each county in our region, and then underneath it, it says the goal. And we have to get to the rate goal of 30% by 29 and then 45. So when Eagle tells us we are meeting benchmarks in the number of access to curbside recycling and the number of drops, that's not a recycling rate.
Right, that is
So
separate.
what is our recycling rate? And are we on benchmark? And if we're not, how do we get to 30%? And that's, I mean, right, that's the nut.
Right, and I understand the frustration on that. Fishbeck is trying to collect what data they can, and this brings up the whole retrack discussion. And Vimla is going to talk about data collection in the January meeting, because obviously we do need to know what our recycling rate is. The recycling rate that Dave and I previously provided, that was just based on information that we had as counties for drop-off sites. So that's such a small percentage of the bigger picture. Like recycling, you know, there's so many different facilities and entities that are recycling, and so we did get some data from Meyer, and I plan to share that at the next meeting. And Meyer's doing an excellent job.
So next month, we will get some sort of report that says, this is what we know about our recycling rate, and it indicates this is our rate, and also here are our information gaps. Like, that's going to be spelled out in a report or in our packet.
I know we've talked about retrack before, but essentially, like MRFs, off the top of my head, I can't remember. So there's a certain requirement. I think it's, what did you say, 100, more than 100 tons? If you collect more than 100 tons
Right.
a year, you have to report to Eagle's retrack system. So there's a lot of good data in there. There's not all of the data, right? Because there's a lot of folks that collect less than 100 tons a year. But the way Vimla has explained it is she would like, and I don't want to speak too much on her strategy for that, but she would like to, and there's a bunch of DPAs throughout the state that are saying, like, this is law, like, we should have access to this data that's in this system, but some of the private companies are fighting back, right? They say it's proprietary information, but there's basically an organized group trying to push Eagle to release this information, which from there, you get a lot of data, and then you can figure out where else you need to collect the data from. And it's not to say she's not collecting data from the Myers and Home Depots and Lowe's and entities such as that, but she doesn't want to like double dip, if that makes sense. Or does that make sense to you guys?
I think it makes sense. I think I'm just hungry personally to know, what do we know and what do we know we don't know. And it sounds like retrack, we don't know because there are a few private entities who are telling the state that their data is proprietary and won't share it. Okay, well, that's interesting to note, and that's information. But like I want to see where we are current state today, what we know and what we know we don't know, all like in one page basically.
Well, it has to be at least 11 pages because that's what the plan is, but we have enough expertise on this panel to go through and fill out half of this stuff.
Right, which is, we're a year into it, and
Why are
it's,
we waiting
yeah, that's a good question.
to see what they have? We should go through and share what we know through this, and then whatever they have, they compare it. If it's different, we have to figure out why. If it's not, then it's obviously, like, first one here,
yeah.
disposal, existing disposal areas, including name and address.
Right,
Waiting
so
for-
there's a lot of
There's a list of them that we could provide right now.
there's a lot of work on the plan that Susan and I could start writing like today, right?
And Jada and Vimla probably have already.
And that's what I was hoping you would speak to earlier, is like they are working on sections of this plan, and they kind of, they want to do that work that we're paying them to do and then bring it to you guys to review. Some of it's not even going to be controversial. It's just naming addresses and like where these locations are.
But we can't dive into how we want to divert these materials without knowing exactly where everything's at and what we're currently diverting, but we have that information, most of it, some of it. So we need to do that before we dive into more about recyclables. We need to fill out our baseline of everything that's here, of what they're requiring, and then once we have that ahead of schedule, then we can go back in and redefine our processes so they're better.
I don't really see the group coming in to the plan itself until section 2, the materials management goals. All the demographic stuff, that's easy to Google. We can get all that, and I'm sure Jada is probably already hard at work at it.
I guess I would echo, I think there's parallel tracks where the plan is getting written, especially the section 1 and some of the background stuff, while this group is chipping away at how are we going to get to 30% recycling rate by 2029 for compost, recyclable, and then if we want to do hazardous wastes. So we could have a discussion around where we're at on organic material. Are we at 28%? Are we at 46%? Are we at 20?
0%.
Are we at 0? I mean, well, it doesn't look like it because the survey seems like to show a lot of people composting in some areas, but maybe we're at 5%.
That's the thing, like, we don't know what we know, and we don't know what we know we don't know. Like, I just want that information in January. Like, I really wanted it last January.
Can we decide what is subjective that we need to make comment or opinion on, and what's objective that they're working on? Like, there's data that's objective that they're going to do, and then there's ways and goals and procedures and everything that we need to decide on.
But I agree, but we need their bench line.
Yep.
That's objective.
No, I agree too.
For us then to create the more subjective.
Setting targets.
Setting targets and how we're going to pay for it and how we're going to achieve it.
And there's a difference between, if you're at 10% now, how do you get to 30%? And if you're at 29%, how do you get to 30%?
Or are we satisfied with 30%? I mean,
Right.
that's another question that we get to ask ourselves.
At first,
Can I,
until 2029.
can I jump in? Can I jump in? This is Tracy from
Oh,
Eagle.
I hear Tracy.
I just want to level set some of the things that you've
We
said.
can't really
Can't
hear.
see you, just a second.
Hang
Time
on,
out, just a
Tracy.
sec.
Hang on, Tracy, we can't hear you.
This is Tracy from Eagle. She's for those who aren't remembering who.
They're
I'm way more interested in let's figure out how to raise the recycling, how to do tires, how to do hazardous waste. I don't care what the numbers are. That's their problem.
But we won't know
just
if we're
need to
doing
do what we
better.
want.
You
wanna
want to do
it
better, yeah.
I want the how to do it better. And we got to figure that out.
It's not coming from my laptop.
So I think the conversation about where we're at is important so that we know if we're doing
Not
better.
to us, only to the DNR.
No, I don't know. Look, I agree, I hear you conceptually, right? But we as a group are going to have collectively, if we have 6 meetings in next year, and that means 2-hour meetings, that's 12 hours. We have 12 hours to tackle these things. And we got to prioritize, right? And then whether we prioritize organics or tires and recyclables or, right, we got to figure out like where to start and what we can chip away at. And if we're good on organic, then let's prioritize recycle. Even like prioritizing requires data that I don't think we have yet. That's one concern. Like where do we start? We got 12 hours.
Hey,
And
Tracy.
we've got a chicken and an egg. Which comes first, the data or the
Yeah,
goals?
please add some clarity, because I think there's a lot of things that aren't being understood.
Sure. Can you hear me now, Lydia?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
much better.
Okay. So a couple things, and I'm going to try to remember all the things that I wanted to mention. So first of all, I think I'm hearing that there's an understanding that each planning area has to get to the 30% statewide recycling goal that we've set by 2029 or 2030. That is not correct. That is a statewide goal, our 30% and then our 45%. That's a statewide goal. Each planning area is setting their own goals. So we do want a base level recycling rate goal of what you're doing now in your planning area. And then you determine what your next recycling rate goal is going to be. We're not expecting that every planning area or every county is going to achieve a 30% recycling rate by 2029 and then a 45% recycling rate beyond 2030. What we're thinking and planning is that as everyone, all the counties, all the planning areas are working toward materials management planning goals and increasing access to recycling and organics programs, and increasing participation, then what we will collectively see going forward is that we will collectively reach a 30% recycling rate and then eventually reach a 45% recycling rate as a state. So it's not meant that each individual county or planning area has to achieve the 30% and the 45% recycling rate. So that's one thing I wanted to mention. The benchmark recycling standards are access standards. So basically that means that we want to provide access, if it means curbside, if you fall into the curbside category, if you fall into the drop-off site category, those are access standards, meaning that you're providing access for residents or businesses to participate in recycling. That is not a recycling rate. It is not a participation. It is just access. So benchmark recycling standards are access. And then when we get into recycling rates, those are actually, who's participating. Those can be who's participating and then how much material is getting diverted. So again, we are asking in statute for a recycling rate. So the diversion of materials or the recycling of materials that is happening, and it's either recycling of materials or materials that are being composted. You can, in addition to that, provide us with a diversion rate if you would like us to know what materials are being diverted. And so that goes for anything that is included beyond recycling and composting. So anything that's going for fuel blending, anything that's going to anaerobic digestion, anything like that is what is calculated in a diversion rate. So anything that's going for reuse or repurpose, shingle recycling, any of that, or shingle diversion, any of that material that is not going directly for recycling or composting would be used in a diversion rate. So, and then Part 115, our material that is the reported materials in Part 115, those are available to you. But again, the difference between what is being reported in 115 can be shared with you. What was being reported under 175, which was our previous reporting requirements, that information was not able to be shared. The material or the information in Part 115 can be shared. However, when we get that information, we get it in aggregate. So we don't get it for Grand Traverse County or for Leelanau County or for whatever specifically. So that's why we're saying sometimes it's easier in the relationships that you all have directly with your material recovery facility. It may be easier for you to get that material because a lot of that material is coming into us in aggregate from the companies. So when GFL reports, they may be reporting to us for all of their facilities in Michigan and not just giving the information to us from from the Traverse City facility. So, but that information can be had from the solid waste side of our division, and you can reach out to, that's Rhonda Oyer's group that can share that information, what we have reported into 115 from the facilities already. So hopefully that helps clarify some of that?
So it's not Eagle's recommendation to wait or utilize retract data because they can't separate it out by county.
I've heard
Correct.
Tracy say that before.
And I
And I think we've talked about this a couple months ago, that, I mean, we're not suggesting that you wait for retrack. You can absolutely contact the solid waste side and ask for what data has been reported into it already. But then, above and beyond that, definitely reach out to who is in your planning region and see what additional data or data, directly from who's in your planning region from, Mark should be able to give you the data that is being,
We got it.
the data that, from the material that's being recycled just from your 3 counties. Mark Bevelheimer, right? So he should have that information more
It
so
sounds
than
like we
what
have
he's going to
that
report to
already,
us.
'cause
He's going to
Leelanau
report
does.
to us everything that's coming in from into the Traverse City MRF from all the counties. So we're not going to be able to separate that out at our level because we don't know. It's just reported as all of the stuff coming into Traverse City, which is more than just your 3 counties. And we don't know that information. That's not how it's reported to us. So it's going to be a little bit of both, definitely you can get information from Eagle, but then definitely having to have some of those relationships and some of that information from your own data gathering. And just because it'll be, more specialized and more specific to your area.
Yeah, so I have had that suspicion, and I've asked Mark for curbside recycling information, which he did not provide. So I think I just need to poke him on that again, because you're saying we have the data, but we have the drop-off recycling data.
That's what you have, that you're
Yeah.
referencing, Bill.
So that doesn't
If it's a
include.
contract- If it's a contract, they have to report back what they've done to fulfill that contract, so we have all that data.
We don't have all the curbside
We
recycling.
don't have curbside.
So
we
if they're
don't gotta
not
worry
giving
about
you
it.
curbside data, then that indicates to me that maybe we want to revisit our contract so that we can make sure we're getting the data we want. Again, I just want to know, what do we know and what do we know we don't know? And I want that in one place so that we can estimate what our current rates of recycling are, so that we can do a better job of setting informed targets that meet or exceed state benchmarks and frankly state goals, so that we can start having real substantive conversations about what are the carrots and sticks we have access to, how do we tie bar our plans to ordinances that we're going to need in order for these things to be enforceable, where are we missing end markets that we need to invest in, or equipment that needs to be invested in, like that. Some of that work is outside of the bounds of this committee, but some of it is well within the bounds of this committee, and we're not able to have these conversations because we keep talking about having conversations.
When is Fishbeck going to be done with section 1?
Jada, did you catch all of that?
Yes, so if there have been any times that I haven't chipped in where I meant to, occasionally people who are sitting further from the mic will cut out a bit, so I apologize if I've missed anything, but I do understand that we're essentially looking for an understanding of what data do we currently have and what information we currently have versus what we're missing, correct?
Yes, I think
A
so.
review for each of the 3 counties of what information we know about what's going to landfills, what's being recycled, and what's being diverted from landfills and not recycled, what we know and what we know we don't know.
Absolutely, yeah, I think that is very much something Vimla and I can put together. I think it would be best to have a clear understanding about that, especially when, like in the context of what Tracy said, I think there is some information that is best to come directly from the counties, which would come directly from like those waste haulers or recycling haulers. For some things, she and I can pull from Eagle databases online. So I think that sounds like a good plan to establish what we still need from you guys versus what we can procure on our own, if that makes sense.
And when you say what we need from you guys, which guys are we talking about?
Oh, counties, I guess specifically.
Okay.
For example, I think all of the HHW information that we were able to pull in is a good example of we wouldn't have been able to source that information on our own. That is something that we would specifically need to pull from.
My understanding is that
All of
staff
us.
from all 3 counties have provided all the information that
Right.
our 3 counties have. So if something's missing, then we just need to know what the gap is. And it's not something that staff is going to be able to easily deliver because they've already delivered everything that's easy to deliver.
And
Is
so-
that cut out
Yeah,
for the
so
most part?
that would go into the column of things we don't know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. There was one other question, Jada. What is the expected timeline on completing section 1 of the report?
Section 1 of the report, I don't want to give an exact timeline because a portion of it, of course, is BIMLA's element of things. As far as the data that I have been working on, we have HHW pulled through. I believe that predominantly what we're missing in terms of recycling, right, is that curbside recycling. Because for the most part, we have Myers recycling data. If we aren't able to get more information from other box stores, we can always extrapolate that to say like this many employees, approximate that to what that would look like for other box stores. And we have total commercial recycling data as well. So I believe that we can make an estimate for curbside recycling data, but it would of course be best to have that exactly from haulers. I know that mostly pertains to Grand Traverse County because I know Benzie and Leelanau don't have curbside recycling, correct?
So it sounds like that's the biggest challenge, to get the materials generation numbers, but like the infrastructure, the demographic, population density, that kind of stuff is super easy.
Yes, we can
relatively.
access a majority of that from, oh, sorry.
I just want to say, months ago, I did ask Mark from GFL if he tracks the curbside recycling by county, and he never responded. I believe I've emailed him twice about it now. So that's unfortunate, and I don't know if that was him just saying no, that he doesn't, but I would think that they would keep track.
If it's not in your contract, they're not going to do it. If you said to them, all we want is how much is recycled, you're going to get a big lump. And if you said we want recycle, curbside separated from drop-offs, then you'll get the information. If you don't ask,
And
it's got to be in the contract.
Grand Traverse County doesn't have a contract, per
They
se,
have to
like,
have a
and
contract
then
with GFL.
Leelanau and
picking it up.
Benzie
Well, the city would have.
do. I don't know if you want to weigh in at all.
I don't think there's any curbside in Benzie or Leelanau.
They're like I live in Lake Ann and I have curbside through GFL. So certain parts, if
Like
it's a
little
population dense right area, it makes sense.
But I live in Beulah and they don't have it there.
I don't know anywhere in
And
Leelanau
I wonder if
County
the
that has that.
city's contract requires reporting from GFL.
I don't know the details of it, but.
I don't know if you guys know
So
that.
Lydia has the ability to audit GFL if she likes, and could get that information pretty easily. Again, we've been talking about this for a while.
So many months.
I'm hopeful that our contractor is working on all the other stores. So along with Meyer, which is great, it sounds like we have that information. Think of all the box stores, the white goods.
Large producers.
Think about small producers. Do we want to include all the mom and pops that are recycling? Once you add them all up, that's, each individually is not a lot of information. You add them up, that's a lot of material. Or do we leave those out strategically and add them later to boost our numbers? Because we don't have time to gather all that information at this time. So we've been here for quite a while, And it seems fairly straightforward and simple, simple to get this information. And I don't understand what the holdup is. I guess I do. We're waiting for retrack the Eagle information.
But
I would just take that off the
Eagle-
table.
That data
We're not waiting
isn't
for
good for
that.
us.
So I've suggested that for several months, is that's not going to help us.
And to be fair, I did question Bimla, and I said, Tracy spoke about retrack at one of our Benzie meetings, and she basically was saying Christina Miller could present and talk about retrack more in detail. And might
not on
have
our list.
different information than Tracy, but I'm gonna say let's trust Tracy's input. So yeah, we can scratch that and as a DPA, I will make it very clear to Vimla that we're not gonna wait, and this is aggregate, not by county. We do need to go to GFL and see if they can get us that curbside data. I don't know, I'm assuming parts of Leelanau County have curbside, like Relicville area.
There might be a block, but that is literally it.
Okay.
And why do we need the curbside cutout? Why do we want to know that?
Why
number
do we want to know the curbside?
Compared to, an
'Cause
aggregate of all of our recyclables.
We're trying to get the most accurate picture of what is being generated and recycled, right? So Dave and I calculated a recycling rate, but that was only using the data that counties had for their drop-off bins. It didn't include everything else that's being produced and recycled, if that makes sense. And I don't know if I'm wording that incorrectly.
Is
but
that the data that you gave us several months
Yeah.
ago?
Yeah, and all that is Bill is right. In our
helpful.
contract, GFL provides how many tons of materials are collected at the drop-off sites.
And
And
you
the-
don't do anything for anything else?
I'm sorry, what's that?
You don't have any asks for any other information? You just want it from your drop-offs?
That's all GFL is contracted to
Report.
service.
You should change that.
No, not to report. That's all that the county has a contract for GFL. Otherwise, their individual entities are contracting for their own hauling.
Recycling is basically just the city or with a personal individual
Yeah.
that contracts with GFL. So the county isn't contracting with GFL for recycling in Lake Ann.
And then furthermore, townships can have single hauler contracts too, where they say, we only have GFL, or we only have.
Do they do
Republic.
any of them?
Yeah.
A few of them do.
Okay. So I would like to see, like, are we reviewing the contracts that exist and making statements about how they could be improved if they need to be improved? Is that part of this data review plan that Fishbeck is doing?
I don't see why we can't put contract review or better contracts as a recommendation in the
I seem to
plan.
recall that was part of the proposal that came from Fishbeck and was one of the attractive components.
Yeah, Jada, do you remember? I don't.
I apologize. Could you repeat the question? It had been cutting in and out.
Sounds like
Can
it.
we review contracts between haulers and I think just municipalities, because private.
And counties.
And counties, yeah. To look at what their reporting obligations are. Did I get all of that, Sarna?
And other best management practices, like it'd be
Okay.
really great to know if anybody's getting overcharged or like who's paying the least so that other people have more leverage.
None of
to-
that data gets this plan started to get worked on. Like, we need information put in this plan.
Right.
And it's a draft, and we can do 10 drafts, but we need a full draft done so we can start improving each draft until we have a final draft. So it doesn't matter what information we don't have right now, we need to put the information we do have into this draft so we can start a second draft.
Okay, did you get that, Jada?
I believe so. And if
Okay.
I apologize, this is a section back. If we are hoping to we are well underway on working on the section one of the report being the material management infrastructure section. Just to clarify, we are well underway into working at that. That has been a process of collecting all the information, and sections of the report are still coming together, even if it doesn't feel like there are, I guess, concrete deliverables. I do understand the frustration, and I don't want to minimize that by any means.
Is that,
But I think with the, oh, sorry.
oh, I was going to ask, is that something we can share with the group? Are we ready to
Yeah, so
put phase or section 1 out in the world?
it is not entirely finished. We are still waiting. It has been difficult to get clarity from Eagle on specifically like what qualifies as recycling, what qualifies as diverted from landfill, but not recycling necessarily. And I think there has not been a lot of transparency, which has held up other counties as well. This is something that is not just a tri-county specific issue. There has been sort of a MMP holdup across the board in terms of these definitions and how much we can move forward. But if there is essentially the section 1 of the MMP is still held up a bit by this, but at least by mid-January at the latest, we would be able to have a draft of this version. And
So
we could always,
that's after our next meeting, would be
Can we get it
mid-January.
before?
I think we need
So
to
if there
know a
was-
summary of all of the relevant waste
I apologize.
management information that we have and the
Yeah.
known gaps, and we need to see what of this plan is already filled out, even in draft form.
Yes, in the form of this draft.
Right, and I
This
don't think we
particular
need to invent a new report to show you what data we have and what data we don't. We just put it all in here. It's in the format.
Great.
Plop it in, share it with you, and identify with yellow highlights or whatever makes sense. Here's what we don't have that we still need to get. Can we get it or can we not get it? Does that make
Right.
sense, Jada?
yeah, and I think that would be a good idea for clarity reasons, but we can also, a significant portion of section 1 is the infrastructure, and I've been putting together a report that essentially lists landfill data and facilities for the Tri-County, which is just the Leelanau landfill, what waste haulers exist, some census information. It is not the entirety of section 1, but if it
Just
would
whatever you
be-
have by the time we have our
least-
next
Yeah,
meeting.
we need to show some progress.
Yeah, absolutely. We can
Okay.
provide that. I would have to confirm with Vibala on an exact date, but that is something that on my end is entirely pulled through. We don't have recycling data, which we were originally hoping to include in that report, but if we want to have that draft pushed through without the recycling data, that's something we can do.
Yeah, let's just get it into section 1 form and provide what we've got. Put notes in to say, we don't have this yet, but we're working on it, or we just know that this data doesn't exist.
Okay, noted.
Is that what the group would like to see, since I'm just charging ahead?
Seeing a lot of nodding heads.
Okay, good. That sounds good, Jada, thank you.
And I can speak with her as well about putting together, I don't know that it would be necessarily a consolidated report, but I do think it would be a good idea to have information required, information had, who is responsible for acquiring each information, what we can access and not. And that would likely be sooner because that wouldn't need to unless you would prefer it in a more consolidated report form. I think that that's something that could exist even as an email list, just so we have that sooner than later so people can get started on getting data that we need to.
That sounds
If
great.
that is something that everyone would be comfortable with.
I think that sounds important to make sure people aren't assigned data harvesting that didn't realize that they were assigned something. So that sounds smart.
So looking forward to the January meeting, reviewing section 1 or whatever progress they've made on writing the plan. We can look at the Meyer data if you guys, I mean, it's just a couple pages, but it was kind of interesting. And I kind of give my hats off to Meyer too. And then data knowns and unknowns. And so I'm just thinking of agenda items for the next meeting.
So all of that to me is not an agenda item. That's like background information that leads to an agenda item that is, for example, setting some targets for our own plan, that we want to reach that 2030, 2045 goal that the state set out. We want to exceed it, or we want to not reach it because we have apparently permission to be under that because we're in rural Michigan as opposed to urban Michigan. Like, I would love for us to have that conversation to say, like, how ambitious would we like to set our targets to be? So that we can then start really digging into how are we going to get there then? If we're not feeling very ambitious, then we don't have to do better with tires.
In the table that you had in your packets that Lydia and I put together, one of the things you'll notice that we had as a potential for next month was throwing Corey and Andy under the bus and asking you to talk about curbside and why there isn't more curbside in the 3 counties. Is that something you are willing and able to talk about next month, or do we even want to have that conversation?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty easy to discuss. It's cost prohibitive, it's infrastructure prohibitive, it's, yeah, I could do it in 4 minutes.
And like, what would it take to expand it, like, and
Money.
Density.
right?
Yeah.
A lot of it's obvious.
So Mary's right. So there's density, there's infrastructure. So if I will do curbside recycling if I have a place to take it where I don't have to single stream, or where I can single stream. If I have to sort it at my facility, that's not the capital that somebody has, the small business has the ability to do. So we need partnerships with corporations. We need partnerships with counties. There's infrastructure involved. So infrastructure prohibitive, cost prohibitive, market prohibitive, all these,
And that's the bigger conversation of like, hey, which of those missing value chain items from this people who are doing source separation through the hauling, sorting, pre-processing, processing, like are there components of that chain that we feel as a 3-county plus region we are able to tackle? Like, if we can't have that conversation at this table, then we're definitely not going to tackle any of that stuff, and we won't get any kind of improvements.
And I think the conversation is, given those restrictions, where do we get the funding to do this so that we can expand it? Like, how does Susan get curbside is the goal of this conversation for me personally.
So I can be willing to pick it up. I can drop it off to Andy. He can be willing to sort it and market it. But
Okay.
you have to be willing to pay for it.
Okay.
And now you have to pay for trash and recycling at the same rate until your MSW reduces.
Okay.
And then recycling becomes more expensive and trash becomes less expensive.
Right.
So right now it's $85 for a tote for trash, and it's $40 for recycling through GFL or something like that.
Okay.
That would flip if everybody recycled at the
Right.
rate they throw things away. But they have to be willing to make that, to listen to that interpretation, and they have to be willing to make that a goal of theirs is to, we're going to eat it right now.
So how do you learn whether everybody in my neighborhood is willing to pay for recycling curbside?
I'm the use of PA 69
Okay.
tells you everything you need to know.
Okay. I'm not going to read PA 69 to my neighbors.
But it's
So how-
right.
like, how
but
do we put
you
this in the
use,
plan?
Do you use the recycling bins in Beulah?
Oh, yeah.
Would you rather not take that stuff in your car and just drop it at your curb instead?
Yeah.
Boom, there you're done.
Okay.
People would want it.
I know, but that's 5 times as expensive to have the curbside as it is to take it to the recycling place, to the drop-off.
For recycling or for the bin and the service?
Recycling, it is 5, we checked it in Leelanau County, it was going to be 5 times the cost.
Who gave you that bid?
GFL, this is a long time
They'd
ago.
rather not. That's why they gave you that bid. I'll give you a bid that's 10 times more if I don't want to do it. That's
You're not
just
gonna-
plain and simple.
You're just not going to run a truck down the road like that.
I'll let you know what I can run a truck for. I'll do the numbers, and then at the next meeting, I'll let you know what I can do it
Okay?
for.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
Well, and I think in some of the communities with density, like Frankfurt or Beulah, people have the income that they would be willing to pay.
Yeah.
If it was offered as a
So, but there's multiple pieces to the puzzle, right?
Right.
So you have to have someone willing to pick it up. You have to have someone willing to pay for it, and then you have to have someone
Place to
willing
take it.
to take it, right?
Right.
And my business can't do all three of those. I can't pay for your recycling, I can't pay to pick it up, and I can't pay to get rid of it. So we have to make some concessions, or there has to be some partnerships.
Yep. And how do we put that in a plan?
And that has to be done for organics specifically because it's called out versus like we can choose to do that for other recyclables. And it's the same set of issues, but different, different details.
And to Bill's point, though, even about the cans we were discussing earlier, the aluminum cans, it has to be legislated that these big corporations that own the materials recovery facilities have to have some sort of partnership with small business that is willing to do this in Benzie County and Leelanau County when the corporations aren't. So there is some legislative.
We should get all those details. Can we get Susan to do all that? Find out, get all that information?
Which information are you asking for?
How is it done?
Where is it working better?
No,
Which
that
takes
would
us
be
back
good
to the best
information.
practices thing.
Yeah.
Best practices, case
Yeah.
studies, yeah.
But how is it done?
How do you legislate it?
How do you legislate it? I mean, does Cox say, oh, we will not take Pepsi? And Pepsi says, well, we're not going to take Coke. So you got to split all those cans out to get your money back. How is it done?
Same with recycling, right? So cardboard recycles differently than number 1, 2, and 3 plastics do, and I can't afford to sort it, but GFL can,
Yeah, they got to
at the scale they do.
Okay,
Yeah.
so we need something, or is there someplace that can be done so that we can do it in bulk?
Mhm.
But that's, so we need somebody from Cox or someplace to tell us how it's done and why it has to be done that way, and then how could it be done in one big group? So the individual doesn't have to separate everything up.
Right. And does that go in this plan?
The only time I've ever seen that operational was back in Illinois, where they have like a 5-cent bottle return. And the scrap yards, like the pad noses and the Rifkins and those types, would have a place where you could bring in bulk. You'd bring in your aluminum cans. They would check a few of the bags and then weigh it, make sure that you're not weighting it down with other materials. And then they would weigh it, and then they would give you a percentage of that redemption back, but you didn't have to go, to Myers and chuck it through the
One at a
machine
time.
one at a time.
But then you still got glass. You got to separate your glass from your metal.
So everything can be weighed and estimated, but there's got to be some sort of a funding mechanism. So if they're doling out, cash, because that's why people are going to
Or those materials need to be wholesaled.
Yeah.
And then the next person picks up the next 20% there is to be made, and then the next person picks up the next 20% there is to be made. It's just the economics, yeah.
Right, but all we're talking about is getting the deposit back. That's what we're talking about is getting the deposit back, being able to dump it in bulk.
The cost.
So the only way that I know you can do it bulk in Michigan is if you sorted it out by the distributors. Because when the distributors, sell a case of beer to a liquor store, they capture that redemption. And then the liquor store captures the redemption when they sell it. And so it gets paid back up that stream, going back to the state. And so the only way I've ever seen it done is that, like you go to a special event, and if it's all one type of beer, let's say Miller is sponsoring an event, they bring the bags and the containers to collect all those redemption bottles and cans so they can get it back to the distributor. So that's the only way I know it can work in bulk. Other than that, it would have to be something that's legislated, and it would have to be something that somewhere along the way, that 10 cents isn't going to be 10 cents to the consumer, because there's other folks that are going to have to step on it to cover their cost.
So that's the second or third item that's dealt with state advocacy
Yeah.
that it sounds like our committee is really interested in doing something about as part of our plan.
So Karen O'Brien from Michigan Recycling Coalition would be a great resource on that, and I've had conversations with her concerning organics and how, and actually I've talked to some other folks about electronics, but how counties can write letters, but they also can pass resolutions that would be a way of showing support for bigger statewide legislation. And Karen O'Brien, who's the executive director of MRC, has some templates that she'd be willing to share with county officials. So I'm not saying that's like the most effective way, but that is one way. And obviously, you kind of need lobbyists too.
And I'm hearing interest on this committee to like incorporate those kinds of statements into our planning process and be able to have to link arms, and maybe we'll find our neighbors have similar interests so that we can say, hey, as part of our plan, we need the state to change some of its rules in order for us to do the work.
That's perfect world and a long ways off though, because legislation
our
takes a long
outcomes.
time.
And
And
like
we need to figure
EPR
out how to do it differently in the interim
Yeah.
before that legislation
Our
passes
outcomes
so that
can't
it
be
works
based on
quicker.
a wish list.
Sure. But I'm just saying, I'm just hearing, it's like both
Right.
and, isn't,
Yep.
I'm not saying either or, but I'm hearing the and we're interested in supporting ERP type legislation or whatever.
EPR, yep.
EPR.
Which is
we're gonna
extended
talk about-
producer responsibility, which the state of Michigan has a law right now, an electronics take-back law, and it's like we're using tax dollars to pay for electronic disposal when we could be making manufacturers pay for it. So there's a lack of education surrounding that. So that's one thing I would like to address with this committee, because if you look at our survey results, electronics were the #1 material that they had trouble
For any
recycling.
industry, if you put producer responsibility on it, you would, I mean, tires,
Mm-hmm.
who generates tires? They should have a cost associated with taking them back. Cans, recyclables, TVs, anything. It would solve a problem.
So I think wait, somebody over here wanted to say something. Did I miss? I feel like we probably need to take another take on these meeting dates and topics in here and do some refinement, clarify if somebody's name's going to show up on here, like, are they actually willing to do that? But like, make sure that we're having the conversations that this committee wants to have, which I'm not even clear what all the conversations are, because every time we talking about stuff, new stuff emerges. I really want to tackle this stuff too, and I'm struggling to like make sure that we are getting to tackling the real stuff. Meanwhile, the clock is ticking. We have 12 hours left, 13 hours left.
Well, let's find out how this returnable stuff works and what would have to happen to be able to do it in bulk instead of having to feed it into the, one at a time into the machine. Let's you find that? You're our
That's
staff
to
person.
delve into not getting anything done with the plan, though. Finding out what happens with recyclables or a way to do that isn't what we need to focus on right now. That will be on like the 6th draft when we're working on how to deal with
Problem
aluminum
is,
cans.
I don't care. I want to know that. I don't give a damn about the state and we got to hit this rate. Because it's dust on a shelf. I mean, we get this thing done, and it's what we can really do is at the drop-off site in Benzie County is where the rubber meets the road. I mean,
Yeah, there's money to be spent on implementation projects, and yeah, that's where the rubber really meets the road.
Yeah, and
too,
we need to know what's the most strategic implementation, not like what I want at my house, but like for the 3 counties, what is going to make the most impact for the targets that we have set for ourselves. We don't have targets, we don't have strategies, we don't even have priorities right now. Like, we need to have had those conversations so that we know how to see an opportunity and say, oh, yeah, it's in cans, or well, actually, it's tires, or you know what? It's actually organics, which is probably what it's going to end up being, is organics, because that's 40% of what we throw out, and it's gross. But like, we don't know, we haven't had a chance to have that conversation as a committee.
So, here's an example. I think this is a really good conceptualization of material streams right now for Kalkaska County. And I don't think this is, these are estimates. There's no way they actually figured this out like super specifically. So they're usually like doing comparisons across other studies. Like, there's bigger waste characterization studies that like GVSU have done in partnership with Eagle. But I mean, you can see the number one thing they're saying, and we, like, Sarna, you know this, like, A lot of people here know this. We've talked about it before, but wasted food. That's the largest volume material going into the landfill. The second for this was plastic film. The third is corrugated cardboard. So maybe like corrugated cardboard is a low-hanging fruit. Food waste seems like a priority, especially when you start to talk about methane. So like, you're like hoping for something that looks like this, or?
I think if
Does
we
that
had
adjust?
something like, and what is this, what's going to landfill, or?
This is the MCW, so this is landfill.
Okay, so if we had something like this for our 3 counties, then we would say, oh, wow, cardboard shouldn't go to landfill, and it still is. We should probably do something about that. And we're
Cardboard is like the most recycled material that's out there, and it's also one of the most landfilled materials.
Yeah, and Jim Palmer, when we first started this process, he mentioned that to me too. He's like, maybe that is, I see so much cardboard still ended up in the landfill, and like, Andy and I know, like, there's a market for cardboard. It fluctuates, but it's,
one of the best
How
ones
do we
out there.
increase our participation in the recycling program? There's got to be someplace in this country where there was drop-off sites and there's curbside, and how did they raise their participation level? That's what we got to know. Can you do that? You're our staff person.
Jada can do that.
Jada can do that. Thank you, Jada. But those are the
We
kind of
replace-
things that we got to know so that we can look to try and do it right here in our hometown.
education,
I think-
access, right? Like
Sure, but how did they
affordability,
do it?
like.
But literally how?
How specifically did they do it? Did they do it with TV ads? Did they do it with people going into schools? Did they have jugglers? What the hell?
But,
You know,
I
how
mean,
did they do it?
I'm going to go back to Corey's point, which is, part of that is data-driven, right? Like, where is it coming from, right? Is it commercial?
Commercial
Like,
or
right there, I can
residential?
see that that's a lot of commercial cardboard, right? The green, part of the corrugated cardboard is mostly commercial. So going out and knocking on doors in Lake Ann neighborhoods is a waste of time.
Yeah, it's businesses, because we
gotta
know
hit
that PA
businesses, so we
69
can't
doesn't support businesses, so they have no option but to either throw it away or pay for it to be. And it's usually cheaper to throw it away unless we give them an option not to.
So, but until we say, okay, here's where we're at, and here's where it's coming from, we can't come up with a strategy. So looking for best practices is just like looking for needles in haystacks until, we haven't even defined what the needle is we're looking for. We need to know, those are the top 3 things that are being diverted, and how do we attack them? And then for each one, what are the strategies? And the strategies are going to be targeted to the source and the contributions, and the, and of those, we're going to do stores over a certain size, stores that have more than X percent of something that they buy every year or whatever, right? Like, we can't hit every single store that's commercial. Anyway, it goes back to data, otherwise we're just spinning.
I feel like maybe we're finally having a somewhat visionary conversation. I feel like, unless I missed them in the first couple meetings, it's like, what do we really want? And if we really want businesses to be able to recycle their cardboard, maybe PA 69, we need to consider changing the funding mechanism. So what's most important to us? What's most important to our residents and our businesses from the surveys? And then figure out what are our goals and how we make it happen.
Yes. We need some information about what's most important and where most of the stuff is currently going and who's doing it. This is helpful, even though it's next door to us.
Yeah, but I do think, and I think David attests to this, is it's going to be very similar county to county, right? Like this, I know that this data RS got, like it's obviously an estimate, like it's not going to be perfect.
It's based on assumptions.
Right.
Yeah.
So like I think pretty much across the country you're going to find food waste is the largest volume material. And plastic film makes sense to me, cardboard makes sense to me.
But once you get down into the cardboard, it's offset so much on the weight of where it comes from. It's mostly commercial, right? It's based on the,
Right. So how
that's where you focus. You
how-
don't focus
yeah, how do
necessarily
we-
on
It's
residential.
clarifying. Yeah, it's clarifying because
But that's a cost of business. Somebody should go to that business and say, you should rent this cardboard dumpster and we'll put it right next to your garbage.
And that someone is probably us.
No, that's another business that collects cardboard.
Well,
Not-
it obviously doesn't exist in Kalkaska County, and if it doesn't exist and it's really needed, then that is the work of this committee can like set up the infrastructure to incentivize that business to emerge out of the community.
GFL is all over Calcutta.
Well, clearly they're doing a terrible job with commercial cardboard. So
That's what the graph shows.
that's what the data says. And so how can we do better? Be great. That's what we want, is to like have the information so that we can have a conversation about, okay, this committee, we're focusing on food, film, and cardboard because they're the top three. Like that is a thing that we could decide collectively to say, and then we could dive deeper into those three arenas and see how communities have done better in those places and make sure that that stuff gets put into a plan. And then we have time to like create the enforcement mechanisms that make sure the plan actually doesn't get dusty and is used.
Jada, is a plan like this something that you can put together from the data that we have, or is it just going to look like this?
I suppose it depends on, so just to clarify, we're hoping on making a plan. I guess I want to clarify what the objectives are. Like, I think that was obviously what a majority of that discussion was about, was deciding what our priorities are in terms of actionable steps towards material management, correct?
I didn't understand the question.
Would you ask the question again, Jada?
Yeah, I guess as I sort of want to specify what exactly we would be looking for with this report, because I know I was picking up on a majority of that conversation was we want to figure out what our priorities are, what we are going to tackle, whether it's commercial funding or residential, and then specifically what materials. So are we hoping, the question to me was if we could make a report of that, do we want to establish our objectives and priorities in terms of a report, or do we mean something that's more data-driven?
We have some data fans here in the room, for sure.
The data is important, but I'm guessing that our data will look very
Like
similar
That's
to
what I'm
that.
saying.
And like,
do we need to spend money?
cardboard is much more important than polystyrene
And-
by volume, by mass, by weight, all of that.
Price, yeah, how
I-
you can get for it.
I would agree
Marketability.
with Corey. If that is the same or
Similar enough.
95%
It's a waste of
similar to
time.
ours, that's helpful. But somebody should make sure that's true. Because if to the point, oh, GFL is doing a terrible job in Kalkaska on cardboard at commercial entities, and they happen to be doing a good job in Grand Traverse County, then our graph is not going to look like that, right? Like, but if the point is that everyone does the same thing in Kalkaska that they do in Grand Traverse, or our chart looks the same as theirs, and we don't have more restaurants contributing more waste food, right? Like, we may have a higher portion of restaurants in Grand Traverse than they have in Kalkaska.
But-
But
It may be
Your
about it may be about participation and availability too, because where do you get rid of cardboard as a business in Benzie County?
Why don't,
Right.
And I agree with, I don't think we're disagreeing with each other. I just think that I just want someone to put Grand Traverse, Benzie, and Leelanau on the top of that with their name on it, so that there's a little bit of ownership in the data, and it's not just, we're just assuming Kalkaska's the same as ours. And that's all we're looking for, I think.
Can you put the numbers that we're putting together for section 1, Jada, into a bar chart like this?
Yes, assuming you mean, I don't know if you're showing something, there's not a camera on my
Oh.
end, but
I'm sorry. Yes, I will
Oh, that's
send you the
okay.
table.
perfect. But yeah, I think as well, it is important to keep in mind. So we have reached out to commercial entities, and essentially they're not all willing to respond. We got something from Meyer, but we
yeah, but
have
Jada, we just
reached
need
out.
you to make some industry relevant assumptions to help us have a better conversation here. We understand that you're not going to have all of the detailed data, that you're still hunting for more of it. But we just sort of need a decent idea of what we look like that's based on reasonable assumptions.
Yep, and the data, from my perspective, if we knew roughly the tonnages of what's going into a landfill, and we have it broken down by its composition, to some extent, you can compile some of those things, and then we had a snapshot of what we think we recycle as far as tonnages. We can put those next to each other and
It'd be
make it-
so helpful.
and make a decision, like, here's a whole bunch of this, and we already have a program for cardboard. We just need to create the infrastructure to create the commercial cardboard recycling in Benzie or Leelanau County or Grand Traverse County.
And then we can all agree that based on that bar chart, there's 4 or 5 very important things that we should go after first. We don't need to be dealing with the very top.
It's gonna be food waste, it's gonna be glass, it's gonna be cardboard. Those are gonna be the low-hanging fruit, from my perspective, that is out there. But then you can look at each one of those recyclable materials and kind of create a little custom plan. And maybe maybe the plan is we need legislation for, like, for instance, on the bottles and cans. We need legislation in order to get a better program going. So that's like a little bit of a longer-term goal. But there's other things where it's like, we just put a commercial dumpster and paid, a waste hauler to get it to a recycling facility. But at the end of the day, I think the thing that's gonna get us to capture as much of the recycling as possible is to somehow create a program, and whether it's through an OEM or process where manufacturers are contributing towards it. But as soon as you can make it more profitable to recycle it than it is to landfill it, there's nothing cheaper than digging a hole and putting it in a hole. But if you can create that incentive for the waste haulers, because they're the ones that haul it and touch it and have the ability to redirect it.
If you were to give me a market where at least it didn't cost me money as a private entity,
Right.
I would do it.
Right. And even better, if you can make even a larger profit or
Yep.
something close to it, then that's the way it's gonna get fixed eventually.
There are ways to get there. I mean, other places do it.
Yep.
Germany does it. You have a policy in place at the top, and the producers are responsible for what they're putting together, and the back end of it, you wind up with less that you have to worry about. But if you got to be willing to pay for it, for sure. I like the idea of just looking at knowing what the biggest volume, weight, tonnage is, and then having some sort of target to concentrate on.
And it's going to be organics. I think it's going to be organics. I think we all know that. And so maybe we can really tackle organic specifically and see what we think is possible in
And
our.
yeah, we have to identify a plan required by Eagle for organics, right? So
It's going to be the largest line, and it's also mandated by the state that we deal with it. So like, let's figure out how to have a really high functional conversation about what we want to do about organics management as part of the plan, and what the plan then implies we need to do
Yeah,
at the
organics is gonna
township.
have the
And
biggest impact. It's the heaviest material, it's the least recycled,
it
and
ruins other recyclables.
it's got the highest impact to environment if landfilled.
But somebody's got to come and tell us how to do it.
Well, maybe that is one, to your point, Bill, where we want best practices.
Yep.
Maybe, I mean, that one Sarna could probably give us the 10 best practice case studies for rural communities on organics.
And we have
tomorrow.
that. I
Right.
mean, we've already, it's
Literally.
already been, like, links to case studies and guidelines, recommendations for each of our 10 counties have been given to this committee. So what we could do is all get those links again, commit to reading those materials, and come ready to have a high functional conversation about what it looks like, not just in Traverse City where we have the density to consider a curbside program, but also in Benzie County and, Leelanau County. How do we, and then, yes, I do have some opinions, and there's a lot of bright spots in our communities already. So how do we elevate that? And I'd be happy to work with staff on putting together a good conversation for us to have, like, at the committee level, where we can actually do something about it. From our level, like, we're not going to go out there and, haul people's apple cores and overturn them. That's not the work of the committee. The work of the committee is to set the stage for great policy to happen at the township level and to maybe put some money towards incentivizing the things that we want to see.
Yeah, along with all those case studies, if you would provide like grant opportunities too, then private entities would be more likely to read that because alongside of that, there's an opportunity
Yeah,
to actually
which
take action.
one is coming down the pipe any minute now from Eagle, just FYI for those who are interested in potentially here or listening, which will be open to for-profit entities too, which is unusual for grants. Okay, how do we feel about moving on from this agenda item?
Well, did
I have
we,
a doctor's appointment. I apologize. So I've got to head out. I don't know if there's any last minute thoughts or questions you want to direct towards me.
Did we lose Andy too?
All right, that sounds
Oh,
good.
okay. Okay,
All
thanks,
right,
Dave.
yeah, have a nice weekend.
so I guess, looking toward January, we would like to go over organics or what data, like,
I think if we had data, and then we can have a conversation about target setting.
How about process? How are we gonna do it?
How are we going to do?
Composting. Who's gonna do composting?
I was backing off at organics because it's going to happen on the 9th. Like, I was thinking, like,
I thought that was our next meeting.
that's what Lydia said. And then I was like, oh, maybe we need to talk about targets first.
Well, goal for the next meeting would be to see section 1 at least of the rough draft and any other pertinent information that can be entered into there, even if it's only somewhat accurate, because then we can redefine it later on. We need to fill in all of those blanks. We need to fill in all of those questions. We need to fill in as much information as possible. Once we have that, then we can dive into furthermore. Organics is important, the most important maybe, and then we dive into, after establishing that it's the most important, how do we go about doing it? But it has to be done. We can't talk about process before we've identified what that is.
so I was saying that earlier, like section 1, we'll present you guys with, but Sarnia, you were saying you don't see that as an agenda item, but obviously I think that would be, because that's how we're going to present it. And then data knowns, unknowns. I mean, if you guys want to see the Meyer data, I'm just trying to figure out what that next meeting's going to look like and what you guys are hoping to have as like an outcome, or what do you want to have discussions about, like, that are productive?
I mean, we're working towards starting to fill in section 2, right? That's,
And 3.
well, and 3, but 2 sort of drives 3. Once we set the goals, then we talk about the mechanisms to execute the goals. We know, based on everything smart people around here have said, that one of the goals under section 2 is going to be on organics. Is there any reason we can't start writing the organics goal before next month, so that we can at least say, description, the planning area will reduce an organic diversion by blank %, and then we can start talking about what, and then resources needed. We need more, tell us knowns and.
Before we dive into the organics too deeply, can we identify 5 materials that need to be
I mean, take,
covered first? 3?
I'm good
Yeah.
with organics, what cardboard, and one more. Anyone? Is that what you
I
mean?
feel like if we get.
Plastic film was the other one for that, but
Yeah, that's a lot of plastic film.
Yeah,
And
that-
C&D looked like it was a little bit lower, but if that's Kalkaska,
It's Kalkaska.
you know, GFL has their facility where they're grabbing a lot of C&D. A normal landfill has quite a bit of construction debris.
that's almost all we haul.
Yeah.
I think knowing what that bar chart looks like for us would probably be helpful to identify the streams that we want to focus on. So maybe next meeting, we can identify the streams that we want to be working on. And whether they're residential or commercially derived streams or both. And why don't we put up like a straw dog target for organics, since we know that that's going to be, I mean, it's already developed by RRS, frankly, so happy to put
All the
that
work.
forward.
Seeds is put in.
I agree. I think it is sort of a straw man proposal, right? It's like something to react to your, yes, there are others, but I think if we just did one, it'll help us frame.
Well, I'm
what's
just
the-
saying for the next meeting, let's do organics that way, but then let's also identify what the other streams we want to be
Yep,
focused are.
those top 5, top 3, whatever it is the most important. But by the time we get to draft number 3 or 4, before we finalize this, there's going to be 12 to 15 streams we've identified based on their level of importance. And we'll work through those based on their level of importance through the procedure that we're going to use to get to those goals. But there's no sense in working on something that's number 15 on the list and doing really well at it if we're still screwing up organics, which is 50% of what we throw away.
Yeah.
So what I think I am hearing to make sure that we get it right is we could take like, we can say, okay, we're going to work the next meeting on the organics goals. Here's some, here's a draft goal for you to review. Here's some of the things that could be objectives based on best practices, and you can choose from that menu of best practices or change them, edit, so that they fit us. Is that what you want? So we come to you with something that's kind of pre-written and you refine it rather than us sitting here and saying, well, how about this and how about this? And Susan still wants curbside.
So long as doing that particular thing is productive towards the end goal of getting this first draft done.
Okay, and that's what I'm asking. Is that going to be a productive way for you to talk about it?
I think it's we got to start somewhere, and it's a good way to start as any.
Okay.
And when you're doing it, like I'm looking at the page where it says description, resources needed,
We'll put it
like,
right in
give
that
us
format.
as many bullet points.
Yep.
So that we're not just like inventing stuff sitting here, but we're eliminating things
Right.
and
That's
prioritizing
more
things.
efficient.
Yeah, if we sit here trying to invent everything without having that best practices background, it's going to be a slog.
And we'll figure out if that's a good process by doing it,
Okay.
I think.
And then we still have the SMART kind of framework as well, and we'll look at that and how to apply that to the format of the plan itself, and how do we use that to facilitate the next meeting.
How are we feeling about the sample size, the response?
Well,
for the
let's
data
move
that
on,
we're
or can we move on from this agenda item, and we can talk about, because that's on the agenda, I believe, the
Yep, sounds like
contractor
we know what
surveys.
to do next meeting.
Yes, can we move on from this agenda?
I make a motion
point?
that we move on. Second.
Okay, and then I said we were going to go backwards, so any comments or questions about the updated household hazardous waste reporting that we got is so much nicer to look at. Thank you. And it also looks like Leelanau is crushing it, and they don't have to do anything different, if I'm understanding it correctly. You're collecting the upper 90th percentile of what's actually being generated out there. So we need to learn from Leelanau County. That's my interpretation. Am I interpreting it correctly?
Is that collection versus estimation? Is that what you're looking at?
The amount collected versus estimated generated is how I'm interpreting it. I'm on page 36 of the PDF. 35.
How do you come up with the estimated amount?
Probably look at per household.
Are you talking about the HHW generation estimates? Yep, so Jada, you can speak to that if you caught my question.
So that estimation is based off of Eagle creates, I guess it's not through Eagle specifically, but different counties in Michigan have a rough estimate of how much HHW in pounds is produced by individuals, essentially per capita. So that estimation is based off of I forget the exact number, it is in the report, but
think
it
it's
is, I
5
believe,
pounds.
4 pounds, 5 pounds per person. So essentially that amount collected versus estimation is essentially saying like, here is how much, based off of this estimation, we believe is estimated to be generated versus how much are we collecting. So that Leelanau 115%, 95%, 96%, 94% could either be very good news or it could represent
They use more hazardous
upward
materials
amount
per
of
person.
generation.
Yeah.
Yes, it could be that we're collecting more, not because we're collecting perfectly, but because we are generating more than we're anticipating. So it's hard to draw an exact conclusion from that. I don't think that's necessarily bad news by any means, and I don't think that it's like perfect news. I do think that is just something to take into account. I wanted to include that metric in the table so we had some sort of base of comparison, because I think we can look at these numbers and say, oh, we're collecting this much, but what does that mean in the grand scheme of things?
Yeah, we asked for that.
It's a
But at
great
least-
metric.
and-
It's just concerning that marginally Benzie and Grand Traverse could be considered the average, and we need to figure out whether people are producing more in Leelanau or whether they just have a better education system to collect.
Which it does if we refer to the summary as well, the resident summary. It did seem as if a significant portion of residents do participate in drop-off events. I mean, it's easy for them to report that and not actually do it. So I do think all of essentially resident summary survey should be taken with a grain of salt, but I don't think it's unrealistic to say that a decent portion of them participate, but yeah, like you said, if it seems separate from the other two counties, it might be worth considering.
And Leelanau's under PA 69, so it's not a funding difference.
Yeah, it's PA 69, right.
Back to more than the $25.
I think we collect 30-something dollars. We voted it to 50 because that's what.
So I did get some information on that. Let me just tell you what it's at, because Gail wanted it to be correct. I believe it's at, it went from 29 to 30 most recently, and you guys approved it all the way. So the Board of Commissioners voted for a $1 increase from 29 to 30, but it can go all the way up to 35. That's what the voters collectively of Leelanau decided on, yeah. But that's what the BOC decided to increase it
And
for.
69 could be voted to how high? 50?
Up to
Just the 35?
35, and Dave left, but I know you can only vote on it like every 5 to 10 years. It's kind of confusing how it's written down, but yeah, you guys can, Leelanau has room to increase it to 35 if you're at 30 right now.
Anything else about HHW?
Is that going to be a thing? We're going to try and encourage everybody to add one more collection?
I know we want to talk about it more, but I think figuring out how that is prioritized compared to other streams in January makes sense.
Yeah, we could talk about it more in January.
HHW most certainly has its place because it's hazardous, and
Yeah, that's
but
how
marginally
I feel.
it's a lot less waste than the other streams.
Volume-wise, yeah, it's less, but
It's
we're
just
talking
as important, very
volatile,
important,
right?
yeah.
We don't want that in the environment. We want to encourage people to responsibly get rid of that. And then, another thing to consider with that is, PA 69 doesn't fund, or it doesn't support businesses in Leelanau and Benzie to participate. So there's no incentive for them. Some counties have it set up where they can pay the counties, but that's more coming out of their pocket. Like in Grand Traverse County, we cover up to 150 pounds per event, per business. So that's a little bit more of an incentive. But anyway,
I'm going to suggest, rather than talking about adding a household hazardous waste event at January's meeting, that we put it off until we talk about the goals for household hazardous waste, because if we're going to focus on organics next month, let's focus on organics, not HHW.
I'm just saying to factor in what we're also going to talk about what our other priorities are,
Right,
and it will
yep.
probably come
So
up
we'll
there.
come up with like 5, I think is the number.
Yeah, Organics, cardboard, corrugated cardboard,
HHW and.
maybe C and D. 'Cause like Andy said, I think there's a lot more C and D than what's being reported. Even if it's mixed, it needs to be reported that way.
And I could find that out through GFO hopefully, so.
So everyone remember that your December packet has great HHW data in it if you want to reference it again. Anything else about HHW for today? Okay, moving up the route, county materials management budgets. This was hard to digest.
And Dave left.
Yeah, Dave
so
would've been-
and
Dave
that was
would've
the
been able to
most
speak.
I
concerning county.
suggest we put this under receive and file, so to
I
speak,
apologize.
for
Could you
now.
repeat the section that we're on? It cut out for a second.
We're going backwards up the.
We're on
items of
9B
business. Yeah, so
currently.
we just did 9B.
Gotcha. Okay.
But Dave left, and he is the most knowledgeable about budgets.
And I'm just not sure what we're going to achieve. We have the information. It's marginally useful in the current format.
Yeah.
I think I just had to cut pieces of paper and line them up next to each other to make sense of some of it.
I do have one question. One thing I did notice is that, can't remember in whose budget, but there was a 2% grant from the tribe, and that was for recycling.
So Grand Traverse County, we work with Tart Trails and Recycle Bicycle. So the way I understand it is basically we're the middleman.
Like the fiduciary?
Yeah, the fiduciary, right? So the tribe's giving money to these programs like Recycle a Bicycle or Tart Trails.
Very specific ones, though, not just recycling as a whole.
Okay,
think, yeah.
I guess that was kind of my
Yep.
question.
There's
because
all
I'm like, oh my
different
gosh.
sorts of 2% grants out there if you go to the Grand Traverse County website.
Get your question answered. I'm happy to receive and file this. I feel like whatever, I'm not sure what we were intended to get from this. It was really difficult to digest.
So, yeah, I don't know why it formatted like that. That was kind of silly, but the idea behind that was you guys asked for a kind of where are we at financially with each county and the materials management departments, because obviously the feasibility is a huge thing. Like like Benzie's running out of money. Why is Benzie running out of money? I was hoping Dave would have spoke to the ways that he could address that through, voting with PA 69. It looks like Leelanau and Grand Traverse County are pretty healthy with where they're at. But it was just to kind of give you guys that information.
Yeah, we won't be making any financial decisions anyway, though, from the subcommittee, so that's the commissioner's kind of worry, I guess.
Well, no, just so you when we start talking about funding mechanisms, which I understand is more of a political decision, I think it's still something we need to consider. If you're going to add an HHW event or a drop-off, like you need to know financially what's possible working from your
What are they
budgets.
at? Do you know what Benzie's at?
25.
25. Yep.
Yeah, we're just the $25 per parcel,
Per parcel or per
per
household?
household, per.
We improved private residence.
Per unit,
I
yeah.
guess the concern I think the way this came up, as I recall it, was one of the questions was, why don't we do more events? Why don't we have more drop-offs? And then the response, well, it's the budget, of course. We don't have enough money. And then I was like, well, I didn't, what are the budgets? And I'll be honest, I don't know how to interpret these 22 pages to be able to tell that Benzie County's almost out of money, but Grand Traverse is flush when it comes to hazardous waste.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I had the same thought.
It just, it tells me the total departmental budget for the year and the spend to date, but it doesn't help us identify how much is earmarked for things and how much should be, it's not relative or contextual in the sense of those events.
How much does
so.
a thing cost, not just how much money do we have?
It's really, I'd be happy if this came back on the agenda with Dave to discuss it, but like it needs to be digested information that we can actually understand when we look at. And 22 pages of numbers that are mostly zeros is really unhelpful.
But maybe instead of an actual amount, it's like, how long until Benzie's out of money? Is it 1 year?
years.
Is it
Right.
3 year?
3 years.
Yeah, I know personally it's 3 years, but then what about Grand Traverse? What about Leelanau? How are Grand Traverse and Leelanau funding?
The context part.
Yeah, the context, not necessarily the numbers surrounding it.
So receive and file.
Yep.
Great. Okay, back to Frank's question. How are we doing on our contractor resident surveys and reports? I think you asked if we're happy with our return rate. Frank, is that what you wanted to know?
It's like 700 people.
You asked a question about the surveys, and we're finally there now.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't hear the question.
It was your question. I was just asking. You asked something about return rates or
About the
sample size.
Yeah.
Are we happy with it?
Yes.
We may get another bump. I mean, since when Vimala did the staff report last week, we were at 600 and something. We've now increased that by, off the top of my head, I don't know, but it's 100 and some.
How are they going out?
Mary sent some out with my tax bill.
Okay.
So I'm in Benzonia Township. My tax bill includes like a newsletter thing, and there was a blurb about it and the QR code on the newsletter so that I could go directly to the survey from my tax bill, basically. We also did press releases in the last week. So last Friday I sent out, I think 2, and then Monday I sent out 5 or 6. So we hit the Traverse City Record Eagle, the Leelanau Enterprise, the Benzie Record Patriot, the Ticker, 2 of the TV channels, one of which is up north. What is it called? Up north something. Yes, Up North Live. Thank you. And what else did we? I think that was it.
Benzie Conservation District just started promoting it,
Oh, cool.
their annual meeting, their website.
Yeah, we asked I sent out an email to I think it was 151 local units of government with a letter. I sent it to you guys as well. And I had a few people respond that they'd put it in newsletters on their websites. Andy was very generous to include 2 surveys in Bark's newsletter that goes out to a couple thousand people. So I would expect that this number's gone up, especially with the press releases.
I sat at a craft fair last weekend and had people do the QR code, and I could do all kinds of young families. That's what.
Cool. Jada, where are we on the getting surveys back from local governments and business, other than Meyer?
So, yeah, I can, before that, just for a quick update, when I had updated the full resident response report on Monday, we were at 749, and we're currently at 782. So it's not a significant jump in the past week. We can always discuss later if we want to do another iteration of this, specifically the resident survey report, or if we're saying, okay, what we have is a decent representation. But as far as I have access to the business and institution survey as well as the LUG survey. It looks like for the LUG survey, we only have 4 responses. We have 2 from Benzie County, 1 did not specify, and 1 is listed as other in terms of counties.
Interesting.
How did the business survey has gone out, and how did it go out? I don't think it's gone to independently owned businesses in my county.
No, we're still working on that.
Yeah. Maxwell, did you send them out through the chambers?
Yeah.
Okay.
We were, Fishback was gonna
Yeah, we had a
reach
big list
out
of
to all the
businesses.
lugs specifically, like,
Yep.
so that's in
And
progress.
Lydia actually ended up sending it out because we felt it would be more effective for a fellow government person to send it. So Lydia sent it out to 100?
151, so that's interesting. Only
Only 4
4
responded.
people responded.
Did we
so-
follow up with like a personalized call of some kind?
No, but it seems like we should take that approach now.
It seems like
Because
it.
I've heard from someone who's actually a staff member at Grand Traverse County who also is a supervisor in Leelanau County. He's like, oh, you're the one sending me those annoying emails. So it's like people don't like emails and they don't
And I
probably
think
read
we decided, or at least this is my memory, that reaching out to lugs with a survey was really a great opportunity to do relationship development more than it's interesting to find out what's on the survey. So it's really like, hey, we care about recycling. Just wondering if you do too. And then you'll know by talking to them directly, I got 7 allies and 3 antagonists today. So I do think that that's kind of a high priority if we're going to get an adopted plan to go through to find out who are our allies and antagonists in the lugs.
The survey is a long survey. It takes a while to figure
I,
out.
I think it's more important to talk to the lugs than to have them fill out the survey, frankly. So that's my opinion.
Yeah, I will say that, in my district, when Lydia sent it out, or maybe it was Katie, I'm not sure, but somebody sent it out, I also forwarded it on to my group and said, hey, Lydia's the gal, but if you need to talk to somebody friendly that I can help you too. Every time I go to my townships, I report on this committee specifically, and I'm talking about this all the time. So yes, it is very important to have that conversation. I would love, Susan, if you wanted to come with me to some of my districts. I've been wanting to extend that that arm as well. But it is so important for them to see your face and to know that this is important to you and give that opportunity. Crystal Lake Township has an environmental committee, and they've asked me, hey, how can we support you? I'm like, let me push you to Dave. I'm not Dave, but I mean, they do want to connect. They do want to be part of this. And yes, I think it is so important that we are showing up. They are seeing our faces. We are talking about it to them.
Christy, just holler anytime you want me to go to something with you.
Okay.
Another good group to reach out to is all the watershed groups. For
Oh,
one, they're really
yes.
good at writing grants.
Yes.
You almost, if you want a grant, you almost want a partnership with a watershed.
Yes.
But those guys are really involved from a nonprofit perspective in letters and just reaching out by hand. They're really good at that.
Okay. Jada, let's put that on our list of people to collect the names of, the watershed groups in the 3 counties.
I'd like to get a copy of the business survey. I mean, I was pushing the residential survey, and an owner of a restaurant said, well, what are you going to do for commercial? I'm like, they don't have it.
So I'll get you the link and the QR code.
Yeah, I've been asked for that as well.
Yeah, I think
And that was in
CCing
the press release too.
committee on everything that goes out to folks so that we're aware and have access to all the links would be helpful.
So did the press release, did that go out in this Record Patriot edition and this Record Eagle? I mean, what?
I sent the Record Patriot last Friday, and I sent the Leelanau Enterprise last Friday, and when I looked at my Record Patriot, yesterday or the day before, it was not in there. I didn't see it. So it may not have made it to them in time. That was my
Okay.
hope with Friday. The Record Eagle went out on Monday, plus all the, the TV stations, the ticker, all that kind of stuff. Those all went out on Monday. Oh, and Northern Express and the Betsy Current. There's 2 more. So I haven't seen it anywhere yet.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
So, yep.
So Fishbeck, you'll be following up with phone calls to lugs? Is that part of the
We
plan?
can do that. Jada.
Okay, anything else about what agenda item are we on? Contractor updated resident survey reports.
Talking about the resident survey.
Any other comments or questions here? Hearing none?
Let me see. On figure 3 for the resident survey report, how respondents recycle, that obviously showed, the rural landscape for Benzie, Leelanau, that a lot of people rely on drop-off recycling. I was surprised, though, by the a little less than half say they compost. So I think so there's definitely people who care, and there might be even more of an appetite too, if it was convenient. And then I don't know, eventually I'd like to talk more about electronics too. Since I can already envision an education plan about the electronics take back law, just because that was past years ago, and you can get manufacturers to pay for electronics instead of using local tax dollars. So those are pretty much all my comments on that.
So with the addition of electronics, I now have 5 things under priorities: organics, cardboard, construction debris, household hazardous waste, and electronics. So if we want to look at goals for 5 things, there's our 5.
Nope, those are 5 on the list, and we need to see some data so that we can prioritize whether those are the correct 5.
We will give you the most beautiful bar chart on the entire planet.
Just a regular one would be totally sufficient.
But that seems to be electronics do seem to be a priority for residents. So that is good to know.
Yep, I like that.
I do think also, I know there was a decent discussion earlier about focusing on commercial, and this doesn't necessarily have to change any of the 5 that we plan on focusing on, because I think those can all still be true. But I do think there was, a decent response from residents about, certainly an eagerness about increasing recycling availability. They had specified that in one of the questions is what would help you recycle more, and the biggest response by far is curbside pickup. And then in the question, what prevents you from recycling, it's lack of curbside recycling and inconvenient to lug recycling to a new location. So I think typically, obviously I can't fully speak to how a county wants to make a decision, but I think obviously you don't want to implement solutions that people aren't going to engage with, but I do at least think that it might be reassuring to know there does seem to be a lot of eagerness around recycling, composting, essentially waste management in general. So I don't believe that there should be necessarily a concern about how much. I think it can still be a valid concern, but I don't think we need to be worried about if residents are willing to engage with this, because it does seem, frankly, if they're willing to drive their recycling to these drop-off events, I can't speak for all of them, but I do think that we would have a decent amount of people willing to pay the convenience fee that is curbside recycling versus lugging it somewhere else X days a month. And that isn't necessarily, I suppose, like counteracting anything we talked about before. I did just want to highlight that, though, because I do think that that is reassuring results, particularly in this survey. I think for people to show such willingness and encouragement about that, I think is positive.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to second round of public comment. If there's any members of the public who wish to make comment, then nope. Okay, seeing none, then take a motion to adjourn.
Motion. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
We're done. We did it.
Look at that, right on 3 o'clock.
Whew.